Hello everyone and welcome back to our course. In the previous lecture, we learned how to find and load data into our Colab file via Python. In this lecture, we're going to perform some basic data frame operations and functions. So starting with just getting the column names. So we can grab df.columns because the data frame type has properties and functions, one property being columns, and you can find all of the properties and functions if you read the documentation. So if I run this cell, I'll get the columns of the CSV file, date, open, high, low, close, add, close, and volume. All right, next we can also print a schema of the data frame. So I'm going to call df.printSchema, a function this time, and you can typically tell a property will be a noun, but a function will be a verb. And here, look at this. Now we have all the column names again, but we get a schema instead of just the column names. So we have the root, which is the whole file. Then we also have the type of every single property, because this time every column is represented as a property. Then we can also print out rows. So let's go ahead and create another code cell here. And we're going to loop for every row in dataframe.head of a number of rows. Like, let's say we want to print out the first 10 rows. We can then print out that row. You also want to print, well, line break, not necessarily. Okay, then we'll print it, and there we go. So if you add a line break, it'll just have an extra space. So here we have the first 10 rows in our file. And this is going to be starting from the very earliest date. That's how what we consider the first is the earliest. Okay, and we can see we have a row type and we have all of the properties of that row. So we basically get the column name and the value for that column. Awesome, okay. Next up, we can also use the describe function to get a summary of the data frame. So I'm going to grab df.describe and then add the show function here. Run that cell and we're going to see a summary. So here we have the count, the mean, the standard deviation, the min, and the max of every single column. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in so you can actually read the numbers. Here, we're starting with the date. The count of the date is 1,259, and it's the same for all the other columns because that's just the number of entries, the number of rows. Then we have the mean or the average. Dates don't have averages, so we get null. But then for number types, we can see we have the average of all of our columns other than date. And that average is just the average price of the stock over the past 5 years. We also have standard deviation. All right. And then we have min. For a date, the min is considered the earliest, but for numbers, of course, it's the smallest value. And finally, we have max. So we can see that the stock increased in value because in 2016, it was worth $671, but in 2021, it was worth $2,100 because we have here min and max. Awesome. All right. And those are just a few basic properties and functions that we can call on our data frame. Join me in the next lecture where we're going to learn how we can format our table. So I will see you over there.